Howdy. In this video, we're going to talk about sex and intimacy, particularly emotional intimacy, and how that might open up conversations about how we want to connect with one another after our family expands with a child. On a physical level, this makes a lot of sense. We've all of a sudden invited a new person into the home and into our bedroom. Oftentimes, newborns and infants sleep in a bassinet next to our bed, which may have been a space that we connected sexually in the past. Space is a consideration as well as timing. We're now taking care of this child. This child has ongoing needs throughout the day. And so we're tending to them. Are we really able to tend to one another too? Beyond the physical space, there's our physical bodies. For birth parents, there's a shift. They feel different. They have just gestated a human being in their body and expelled it. There's a lot of healing and shifting going on inside. And we've already talked about how fathers are going through these hormonal fluctuations, right? Decreased testosterone, increased cortisol, not a good recipe for sexual intimacy. And it's a time where we're experiencing increased exhaustion, right? Because we're fatigued given all that we're doing throughout the day, as well as decreased sleep and increased sleep disruptions. This is not a good recipe for being physically intimate with one another. And so it makes a lot of sense that we might struggle to connect sexually or physically during this period. And it's going to be temporary. We're going to get our feet under us with the fatigue stuff, with the hormone stuff. However, even after this acclimation period, we might still struggle to maintain that sexual connection with our partner. So let's just normalize this. It's completely okay if we struggle to get back into a sexual relationship with each other. It's not going to be permanent, but if we find that there are these barriers, it is an opportunity for us to open up and explore together, to deepen our sense of transparency and connection. A big part of this is talking about sex. And depending upon our cultural background, we might feel more or less comfortable broaching this topic with our partner. In Western society, we tend to keep sex under wraps, not talk about it, make a lot of assumptions about it. And that can sometimes be a helpful place to start. Our society tends to carry these myths about what sex is supposed to be like. And we can bring these myths into our partnership and into our sexual relationship. We'll oftentimes think about sex as needing to be spontaneous, that we just clear off the dining room table and we throw each other up, just ripping our clothes off. In that way, it's intense and performative, that it's supposed to go on for an extended period of time, maybe hours. And finally, that we shouldn't have to talk about it, that we should intuit what our partner wants and when they want it. And so too, they should reciprocate that for us. They should be mind readers. Even before having kids, this is a pretty tall order of expectations, that we should just know all of these things. And certainly after having kids, these conditions are rarely available to us. Starting to broach some of these expectations, even within ourselves. What are we expecting sex to be like? And maybe using that as a starting point to talk about it with our partners. Shifting our expectations doesn't mean that we let go of passion. It can still be a part of our relationship. However, we do need to adjust to this new reality. This new reality might call us into connecting with one another in ways that are not just sexual, but maybe connect us to an increased sense of intimacy and closeness. Gosh, even talking about sex opens up a greater sense of emotional connectedness. We're being transparent about what's going on for us. We can also explore non-penetrative or non-sexual types of touching, hugs and hand-holding, cuddling, these types of things that create a sense of physical connection. Even just slowing down in the moment, in these brief kind of meaningful connections, just to be present and have this undivided attention. Because parenthood divides our attention a lot. As I mentioned, this emotional vulnerability can increase our flexibility in addressing this. And hopefully with a little bit of humor and some open communication, we'll reduce the stress, the shame, and the awkwardness of talking about sex. Because while not true for everyone, it's true that most people want to touch themselves and want to touch other people, want to have a sexual connection. And what it looks like for us in our unique couplings, that's going to be something we're going to need to figure out. And so talking openly about what our needs are, about what our desires are, and even our fears about talking about sex. All of this can strengthen our connection because it's a two-way street. Talking about sex, being vulnerable about it, increases our emotional intimacy as well. Being seen, being heard, being validated for what we're sharing certainly goes a long way with that emotional vulnerability, but it also helps us get onto the same page with our partner. And it might even help just to let them know that we want to share. We want them to think about it, to reflect on it, but not to respond in the moment. And maybe we can circle back to this later. Moving into an actual sexual contact can be difficult. And so we want to have these conversations with our partners. Prior to having children in the home, we might have had more free time. We didn't need to think about when sex was going to happen. But now we're on a schedule with our child and maybe with other caregivers who come in and out of our home. And so it might require us to let go of the spontaneity and say, this is a time that we have for it. It might have us letting go of those long lovemaking sessions and saying, we have 15 minutes. It's okay to let go of some of those assumptions because it helps us maintain that connection with our partner. And it might require some creativity, thinking that sex might look a little bit different. Things like mutual masturbation. Maybe you and your partner lie there just pleasuring yourselves or pleasuring each other. It might just be oral sex. It might be lying there together, just aware of one another's physical presence. What matters here is that we're talking about what we need. We're consenting to that. We're being present with each other instead of trying to perform for one another. Yes, there can still be these grand sexual encounters that are spontaneous, that are performative, that go on for hours and hours where we magically intuit what the other person wants, but that's not necessary. And it might not be feasible at this point in our relationship. So finding what works for us as a unique couple, exploring that together, again, increasing that emotional intimacy, that transparency, that vulnerability, and strengthening our sexual connection. When this intimacy isn't present, a lot of fathers can start to pull away, to try to escape from this. When it feels difficult, men might escape to porn. Porn is accessible, it's there, and it's easy, and masturbation is oftentimes a part of that experience. Some fathers might get pulled into triangulating their relationship, which means bringing a third person in maybe our partner doesn't know about. This could be an emotional affair where we're sharing our feelings, where we're finding an outlet instead of going to our partner. Or it could be a physical affair where we're actually having physical contact with someone who's not our partner. And we have to be careful about this because in the modern era, these are things that can happen in our physical day-to-day lives, maybe someone we know and someone we're interacting with. And it can also happen virtually. Our texting or sexting or going online for a video call that becomes sexual. Fathers might also pull away by reinvesting or overinvesting in their job, or excessive distraction with television, with video games, with movies, essentially with these numbing activities. These are non-restorative escapes, which means that they don't help us feel better. They don't strengthen our relationship in the long run. Instead, they erode trust, they erode connection, and they leave us feeling worse. I highlight porn in particular because it's easily accessible. It's an easy escape for a lot of men. Porn typically depicts men as being in control, dominance, which can be very attractive for fathers who are feeling out of control. It can depict an emotional detachment or disconnection during a time where we might be feeling emotionally overloaded. It tends to objectify female bodies, particularly female bodies that haven't recently given birth. All of this can reinforce kind of these expectations about masculinity, that we're emotionless, that we're distant, that we're performative. And it's important for us to look at this, to reflect on what attracts us to pornography. It's not just naked people. It's not just the release of orgasm. There's something else going on here. And what aspects of that can we remove from the space of pornography and take into the relationship with our partner? I mean, if it's just sexual release, why not just go to our partner and say, hey, I want to masturbate right now, and I want to masturbate next to you. Is that okay? And it can feel uncomfortable to say things like that or to ask for things like that with our partner. But that reflects a deeper, true intimacy. To say, I feel sexual and I want to express or experience my sexuality in relationship with you. Because intimacy like this requires a little bit of surrender, allowing ourselves to not be in control of this, to be vulnerable. Because being open about sex can affirm who we are, what we need in relationship to our partner. It can decrease that sense of isolation, of having to hide away our sexual desires or our needs, but instead opening it up, sharing it, and being a part of that relationship with our partner. Because when we're open and communicating about sex, it becomes more meaningful. Again, Thinking about the difference between hiding away by yourself and masturbating to pornography versus sitting with your partner and masturbating. There's a big difference where pornography doesn't even need to be a part of that. As we start to wrap up, I just want to revisit that sense of normalization. Our sex lives go through a shift when a baby enters our family. And a shift doesn't mean the end. It's an opportunity for us to talk more about our desires, about what we want, about what we need in this relationship. And this is not something we do in isolation. We do it in relationship, which means our partner sets boundaries based upon what we share, and we set boundaries based upon what they share. Because we're each going to have our own unique type of sexual expression, our sexual preferences, what excites us and what turns us off. And that's okay. And how those two come together as we connect with our partner is going to be unique in our relationship. If it feels overwhelming or inaccessible to have these types of conversations, or you find that when you do broach this, that you're rebuffed, that they don't want to talk about sex, I do encourage you to explore counseling, maybe meeting with someone and talking about what's going on for you and what's going on in your relationship. Additionally, exploring books about sex, and in particular about sex after birth, can help normalize some of this for us and be openings for us to have these types of conversations with our partners. And finally, that piece of social support, talking with other fathers, with friends about your experiences, and maybe even learning or being inspired by their experiences. Because everyone has a unique sexual identity and relationship, it means that what people share isn't going to be 100% perfect fit for ourselves. But it might normalize our experiences and inspire us to think creatively about how we can connect sexually with our partner. It can be tough to talk about this stuff, particularly if we grew up in a cultural environment where people did not talk about sex. But it's important to talk about it because it helps open up and deepen our connection with our partner. I wish you well in this. Thanks.